Hello, Central Assembly in Yakima, Washington, and for all you who are watching online, it is great to have the opportunity to be with you guys here again. Normally, as one of your strategic partners, we're home itinerating for approximately a year, a little over, and then we're back in the country that God has called us to for 4 years or give or take, and then back again. But due to the problems with the COVID response and the lockdown, we've gotten kind of stalled out and been here much longer than normal. Normally, we would be back in Argentina by now. We finished our itineration, and we're are trying to get back. But Argentina, like so many countries, is still locked down. They're not letting people in from outside the country unnecessarily, and so it gave us another opportunity to be here with you guys. And so I just want to tell you, I know that we are thankful for you. That you guys are praying for us, you're praying for Jujuy and for the mission and for the people there, and that you're pulling for us. And I want you guys to know that we appreciate you and that we are praying for you. In fact, really, we view ourselves as an extension of you because we can only be in one place at one time. And so God has you right where you're at, and then God sends other people to other places and has them where they're at. But yet we have this amazing interconnectivity through our prayer and intercession, through our communication, and through our financial partnership. And so it's as if we are an extension of Yakima Central Assembly of God working in Jujuy, Argentina, a place that probably most of you have never been to. So I want to show you some images and just show you where you guys are working, what you're doing, and then what we hope to accomplish when we go back. So in this next image here, you can see the kids. You guys already know my beautiful wife, Heather, but our kids here, our oldest, Nate, he'll be turning, he just turned 17, in fact, and then the other kids have their birthdays coming up. They are both excited to still be here in the States, be with family, coming up with the holidays, and yet really missing their friends in Jujuy. Can't wait to get back. For those of you who don't know where Jujuy is, on this next image, you can see it a little bit. There's Argentina, and way up in the northwest corner is where you find Jujuy. We're right underneath Bolivia, right next to Chile, and they call it the boot of Jujuy because of its shape, because of the outline. On this next image, you can see kind of a breakdown of our 4 geographic regions. We have an area, the tip of the boot is very hot and jungly. It's down low. The green piece there at the bottom, that's called the valleys. That's where we live because that's where half the population of the entire province lives. It's an area not quite the size of eastern Washington. And then you go a little bit farther north, and you really begin to climb in elevation. We're incredibly mountainous area, and that beautiful colored rock area is called the Quebrada. That's over 8,000 feet in climbing. And then the whole northern and western slope is all high desert plateau, and it's all 11,000 feet and up. On this next image, you can see a little bit better picture of some of those regions. And we always tell everybody, not if, but when. When you guys put together a team and come down to work with us in Jujuy, we'll try to get you around and minister and see some of these different regions. You notice the salt flats up there, that's up in that high desert plateau area. Well, this is the part of the road on this next image to get there. This pass that you have to climb up, you go from about 7,000 feet up to almost 14,000 feet and then back down to 11 where the salt flats are, and you do it in less than an hour. And it is an incredible, incredible journey. Just spectacularly beautiful driving through the mountains. For those of you who would be worried about what would we eat if we came down, do you guys eat weird stuff? Do you eat bugs? Do you eat rotten foods like I hear about in some parts of the world? No, we eat totally normal stuff. You can see it on this next image here. In fact, if you love barbecues, if you love to cook out, in Argentina it's called an asado, and we will do a huge cookout with you. You will absolutely love it. It is so tasty. Some people ask, what about like weird bugs and animals that live there? Well, here are some of our bugs. You can see them on this next image. We do have some really cool, weird, big bugs, but they're nothing to be afraid of. We've never been stung by something. There's nothing super, super poisonous that's going to get you. But it is a absolutely beautiful place. We love Jujuy, and we love Jujeños, and the people of Jujuy. And you can see some of our people on this next image here. Most of our people come from Bolivian ancestry. We're being right there next to the border. And so they have beautiful jet black hair and really dark skin and dark features and just bright beautiful smiles. No matter how dark of a tan we get during the summer, we still just stick out like a sore thumb when we're there. But we love our people, and we'd love to have you come down and have a chance to meet them and work with them and minister to them. So here's why God called us specifically to the province of Jujuy, that far remote northwest corner of Argentina. On this next image, you can see we got 750,000 people. Like I said, a little smaller than the size of Eastern Washington, but only 1% would be considered evangelical Christian. And part of the reason for that would be, you can look here on the next image, we have a lot of kind of satanic and occultic type roots that come out of the past and the traditions of Argentina and the indigenous peoples living in the mountains. There's a lot of opposition to the gospel. And the Roman Catholic Church has been there for over 400 years. So a lot of people think, I've heard about that, right? Like I know about Jesus. In fact, my best friend is named Jesus, right? And he's named Jesus. But there's a missing connection about a personal relationship with the God of the universe who loves them and calls them to follow him and calls them to life transformation. More than just being religious, more than just saying a prayer, more than just hoping that you get to heaven. And the hard part is, for 750,000 people, we discovered when we got there that there were only 4 small Assembly of God churches. And it is a place where the church has grown very slowly and only with tremendous, tremendous effort traditionally over time. Some of you might have heard of the great revivals that took place in Argentina during the 1980s and 1990s and still kind of continue in certain areas. But those primarily affected areas way across the country. Just little tiny splashes of them kind of came out to the far extremes where we're at. And it has just been a place where the church has struggled and worked and fought to make any gains that they have gotten. So we said, hey, we want to encourage these 4 existing churches to not give up, not feel like let's just hold the fort till Jesus comes back, because God has given us a task. He's given us a mission to reach the lost people around us, because God doesn't want to see anyone go to hell. He doesn't want to see anyone spending eternity away from him, paying for all of their bad choices and eternity in hell when he's already paid the price for their forgiveness. So the message, the work falls on us to share that message with people. So we were excited on this last term that we helped to plant a new church. You can see it on this next image here. The church is called Impacto de Fe, which means impact of faith. The gentleman there with the microphone, great guy, Pastor Omar Solano, works so hard. All these churches work so hard. We absolutely love the people in our churches and are so proud to be working there right alongside of them. This picture was taken from the church's 4-year anniversary, so it's very new. And in fact, since this photo was taken, they've now outgrown the little building that they were in. You can see some of the construction there in the photos, and on this next image, you can see a little bit of what it looked like on the inside. And they now have to rent a larger area, and they also are working on planting a church in another city about an hour away. So things are progressing. So rejoice with us. We now have 5 officially of our Assemblies of God churches there in Jujuy. In fact, the number is still growing. We have a couple of churches who were either independent or part of another organization who have come into the Assemblies of God. So we're excited about them as well, and yet it's sort of a transfer, like taking the fish out of one fishing tank and putting them into another fishing tank. What we're most focused on is trying to reach those people who are not yet reached. So while we're excited about the new churches that have been coming in and becoming part of the assemblies, it still doesn't change the total number of people who need to be reached. And so that's what we're all about. So also on our last term, we worked with our Presbyter's Church for 2.5 years in doing evangelistic outreaches, not only trying to grow his church, but then they are trying to plant a number of daughter churches all around our capital city. Our capital city is over 300,000 people, 31 distinct neighborhoods, each one give or take 10,000 people. And most of our people do not have a car like we do here in the United States. We're so used to just going out, jumping in the car, driving where we need to go. They have to walk, or they have to take a bus, sometimes multiple buses. And so you spend a lot of time out in the cold or the sun or the rain waiting for a bus and trying to get where you get. It's very time-consuming and difficult. So the goal is, don't make the people come to us at our few locations we have. Let's go to them and plant a new church in their neighborhood so they can quickly and easily access it. So we started doing evangelistic campaigns in different neighborhoods. Some of them were indoors, which is nice because you're not out under the elements, but sometimes in some neighborhoods, you had to be outside. So the church had a tent that they had gotten, and one of the things I love about the church in Jujuy is that they are all in. They are all committed. This was an image from the setup crew that worked so hard to put it up. It doesn't look very big, but it's deceptive. It is big and is a lot of work to set up and tear down. Plus, you're moving all of the chairs and benches, and you're moving staging and sound equipment and stuff to make food, because one of the things that we do is a lot of the ladies in the church, they cook food and then they hand it out afterwards to the people who come. You've got people who are part of the prayer team. You've got the worship team. You got people going out and inviting people, other people giving rides. I mean, everybody in the church gets involved. Even if they think, I'm not really a platform person, I can't sing, I can't play an instrument, I don't want to be up front, but everybody finds a way to get involved in the mission of God. This next image here, you can see a little bit of what it's like to be inside the tent and just filling it up with people. So we are excited. We don't have another work that we can say, hey, this is a now officially church, but there are a number of spots where there are works in progress. There are children's ministry or youth ministry or a Bible study or a home group, or some are actually trying to do all of them together. As they continue to grow, they'll reach a point where they will be considered a church, an independent church standing on their own. So goals for when we go back, we hope to plant churches 6 and 7. And these will be some of those places that are already in process. Amazing people who are just totally committed. And they're just like you and me, right? They're just people in the church who felt God touch their heart and say, I need to reach my neighborhood, or I need to reach this little town over there. And they go and they work and they work and they work, and God is giving them fruit of their labors. And so when we go back, we want to continue working with them to speed up the process and to see churches 6 and 7 planted. And there's something else that God has really brought to our heart, and that's the idea of doing a dinner church model. What is a dinner church? It's where you find a sore neighborhood, a place where there are a lot of people who are underprivileged, who are lonely, who are marginalized, who are struggling, and you find a building to rent in that area, and you set up tables and chairs, and you decorate, and it's all beautiful, and you have a team of people who've prepared a really lovely meal for them. We serve it buffet style, and you invite the whole neighborhood, anyone who wants to come and be a part of this dinner. And we tell them right up front, hey, during that time, we're going to have some worship music playing in the background. We're going to have a short message, about 10 minutes long, a Jesus story, because a lot of people think they know who God is, but really they haven't quite connected the dots. And we want to promote who Jesus is and how much he loves them and how he has a plan for their salvation. And they say, we want to pray a short prayer at the end of that, a prayer of blessing, that God would bless you, that God would bless your family, bless your home, bless your neighborhood. And this will become a weekly event. And then when the dinner finishes, we're just sitting. And it's not like a soup kitchen where you just feed people and they go and sit and eat and leave. You go and sit with them, and you talk with them, and you build relationship, and you build friendships, and you're praying with them, and you're answering their questions. And as people come to Christ, you start leading them forward in their relationship with God, discipling them one by one, and over time, you see a greater and greater number of those people come to Christ, and you literally form the nucleus of a new church out of having dinner together. We actually see this model in the New Testament. They usually did it in people's homes. We're just going to find a bigger place where we can try to fit as many people as possible. Now, this technically was not in our budget. We're not sure exactly how we're going to fund it yet, but we are praying that God would move on people's hearts to say, hey, I want to give, I want to be a part of that dinner church model. Because there are a couple of things that Argentines are famous for. They love to sit and talk, and they love to eat and sip their mate, their tea. And we thought this would be a phenomenal model to use to reach out, especially to poor, hurting, lonely, marginalized people groups who wouldn't normally come out to a church. But when you throw food into the mix and when you throw friendship and camaraderie into the mix, we think that God could use this in a powerful way. So pray with us that God will use those. And in fact, a lot of times people say, well, how can I participate in what you guys are doing? You're halfway around the world. And so there are some really simple and yet powerful ways. So I just want to remind you of those. Number one is prayer. God moves in response to our asking him for things. And so pray for Jujuy, pray for Argentina, pray for us, pray for the church plants, and God is going to answer those prayers and do fantastic things. Number two would be financing. It takes money to move and to live there and to travel and to minister and to do the different things you're trying to do. So your finances are important. Sometimes people feel like, Pastor, I don't have a whole lot to give. I feel like I don't make much impact. Every month we get a printout of all of the money that came into our missions account during the previous month. And one of the most dear lines on that report every month is this wonderful lady, sweet retired lady living on a fixed income from our last church. She gives $5 a month. It's our smallest monthly donation, and yet it's the most powerful, impacting to my heart. Because I see her, and I know that she's praying for us, and I know that she's giving what she can, and she is a part of the team. And man, we are praying for her, and we absolutely love her and her gift. And so never feel like, I don't have much to give. God uses it in powerful ways. So don't count yourself out. The other one is personal communication. You're living halfway around the world, and you can tend to feel very alone and isolated and far from things. And so when people connect with you with email, people connect with Facebook or with other social media platforms, you can even call us. We have a Skype number. It's like calling a Washington phone number, but it calls our computer in Argentina. And when you get reports from people, you receive mail or a card, I can't even tell you how much it encourages you and just pumps you full of energy and keeps you going. And then the fourth one, of course, costs a little bit more, a little more time-consuming, but it is powerful and impactful, is to come down and work with us. Just put together a team and come on down. We will tailor the time to fit what you would love to do or what you feel most gifted at doing. So we'll try to match your skills and your heart and then turn you loose to really impact people's lives. So real quick, I want to talk about what it's like to do the mission of God during lockdowns. Because the lockdowns that we're going through is not just a local phenomenon. It's not just something here in Washington State or something in the United States. It is literally nearly global. In fact, the lockdowns in many other countries are so much more severe than what we've experienced here in the States. We tend to grumble because we're asked to wear a mask, or we're asked to social distance, or we're asked to not meet together in large groups. But trust me, we have it way, way easier and way better than so many other people. Now, I realize that when this broadcasts the first week of December, these stats will be a couple of weeks old, but I just was pulling these, researching these online last night. So let's look at these stats. And I'm also not going to argue stats. I know that there's a lot of playing with numbers, and we're not going to get into that, but just for sake of argument, let's look at how COVID-19 is affecting the world. So worldwide cases, over 52 million people. That's more than the entire population of Argentina at 43 million. Those who recovered, praise God, right, officially have already recovered, over 36 million. But we have registered over 1 million deaths. And so it is impacting. It does affect certain people a lot more than others, and a lot of people live in fear over how it could impact them. In fact, this maybe should be the greatest window of opportunity to share the message of God's love and forgiveness of sins and eternal life with people that we have ever seen in our lifetime. Because normally when we try to talk to people about eternity, nobody's thinking about eternity. They've got work, they've got school, they've got sports, they've got family, they've got friends, they've got hobbies. They're always on the go, 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 go. And it's hard to get them to think beyond what's going on right now and to think about what happens if I were to die. What happens when I step out of this life? Enter global pandemic, and suddenly people are looking at numbers. Now, by the way, people die around us all the time, every year. And we normally don't even take time to stop and process it. Think about it. The media isn't throwing it in front of our face every single day. We're not watching climbing death tolls, so we don't think about how many people die in a car accident. We don't think about how many people die every year from just the flu. And there's so many other ways that people die. We just put it out of our mind. But now suddenly it is at the forefront of everybody's mind. And just in the moment where people are most thinking about eternity and most thinking about heaven or hell or is there life after death, and we have an open window to talk to them, we're separated. We're told that we have to go into lockdown. We're told we can't go out of our house, or we're told we have to social distance or wear a mask, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have this incredible opportunity, and yet there are roadblocks thrown up at the same time. Here are some comparisons for us between Argentina and the U.S. Now, remember, the U.S. has a much larger population, about 8 times the population of Argentina. But when you look at the number of cases, we have approximately 8 times the number of cases that they have. And if you multiplied the 34,000, the deaths, then it would supersede how many people have died in the U.S. by percentage. And if we go to Washington State, where we live here, versus Jujuy, then you see a similar pattern. Now you have to multiply the numbers by a factor of 10, because we're approximately 10 times the population of Jujuy. And so you see that statistically they've had more cases than us, because 10 times I would give them 170,000 cases. And that would mean over 7,000 deaths. So some people have said, why are you guys still stuck here in the U.S.? You guys finished itineration months ago. Why haven't you been able to get back to Argentina? This is why right here. People are afraid. The government is afraid. They also see all of our news. They see all of the climbing numbers, and they get the impression that the whole of the United States is sick and dying. Now, we living here know that's obviously not the case. We're talking about a very, very small percentage of the people, thank God. And yet there's a mindset that says, we've got our own struggle going on. We can't be allowing people to come in, especially not people from areas that would be considered a hot spot. So I can understand their concern when they have much bigger numbers when you multiply them by 10. So you get that same feeling. It reminds me of a passage of Scripture in 2 Corinthians. Paul is writing to the church in Corinth. This is the second letter that we have of his recorded in Scripture. And during chapter 4, it is a powerful chapter. I encourage you to go and read the entire chapter on your own this week. But I want to highlight just a few scriptures and draw a comparison between his time and our time, and see if maybe you don't feel this way. Because most of us are not happy with lockdowns. Many people have struggled with there's no work or lack of work or other restrictions. But here Paul is saying, we are hard pressed on every side. But I love all of the endings of these phrases, but not crushed. We are perplexed, but we're not in despair. We're persecuted, but we know that we are not abandoned. We can even be struck down, but we're not destroyed. We can go through hard times. In other words, that is not the end of the world. No matter what the world throws at us, no matter what the enemy throws at us, it does not change the reality of the fact that we have a calling on our life, every single one of us, to take the message of God's love and forgiveness of sins and right relationship with Him to the people around us, including lockdown. Lockdown does not negate the Great Commission. It doesn't negate the mission of God. I'm going to jump down a few verses here to 13, 14. I love what he says here in the New Living Translation. It says, but we continue to preach because we have the same kind of faith that the psalmist had when he said, I believe in God, so I spoke. That is an amazing statement. Simple, short, and yet powerful. If we really believe God, if we believe that all people are going to live their life for a certain number of years and no one knows how long or short it will be, but everyone at some point is going to die and then step into an eternity. And if they step into an eternity without God, it is not a good thing. It is, in fact, a horrible thing. I've often used to do this when I was in youth ministry. I'd say, we're going to take a time out. I want everyone just to close their eyes and not look around. I want you to we're going to take what I call a hell time out. We're going to think about what would it be like to be stuck in hell? What would you be experiencing? How horrible would it be? How bad would you want to get out of there? And yet, your time is done. You're stuck. There's no going back. There's no do-overs. You are stuck there forever. And I use that not only as a tool to make them think about the reality of hell for themselves, but say, what about your family? What about your neighbors? What about your friends? What about your coworkers? your classmates, the people around your community. We, like God, don't want to see anybody spend an eternity in hell. And so God says, I've given you that task of taking my message, my love to the people around you. We believe God, so we cannot stay silent. We cannot be inactive. We must continue to take his message to the people around us. We know that God, who raised the Lord Jesus, will also raise us with Jesus. I tell people, I say, we as Christians, we have a win-win-win in the coronavirus. One, I believe that we win because God can protect us. We see it all through history where Christians were not afraid during pandemics and during times of great illness. They were the ones out ministering to people and nursing them back to health when everybody else was staying back and afraid. We know that God protects us. Win number one. Number two, even if we get sick, we know that God can heal us. When I look back at reports from the great pandemic of 1918 and 19, there are countless reports of God's divine, supernatural healing and raising people back up from just the point of death. Well, I was reading a missionary biography recently about a great missionary in Africa in the early 1900s. He almost died during that pandemic, and his parents, they got on their face and they prayed and they cried out to God and they interceded, and instantly his fever broke, his color came back. Everybody said, he's done. He's over. He was a teenager. He's gone. And yet God raised him back up and then sent him in a powerful way to minister in Africa for over 40 years. So win number two, I know that God could heal us. And even if we die, we do not hold our lives temporary on this earth to be so dear that we would shrink back from what God would call us to, because those people need it. They need us to take the message to them. And so even if we got sick and died, which many did, by the way, ministering to people in times of sickness, ministering during pandemics, maybe God protected some, maybe God dramatically healed others, but some did die. It is a reality, but it's still a win, because I know that I spend eternity in heaven celebrating forever with God instead of spending it away from him. So to me, it's a win-win-win. So we know that God raised up the Lord Jesus, will also raise us up with Jesus and present us to himself together with you. Hey, we're all in this thing together. Let's continue reaching everyone possible. And then I want to jump down to verse 15. All of this is for your benefit. And as God's grace reaches more and more people, I love that phrase, God's grace is reaching more and more people all around this planet. There will be great thanksgiving, and God will receive more and more glory. And then jump down, verse 16 and 17. Therefore, do not lose heart. Those of you who are sick of lockdowns, you're tired of social distancing, you just wish it was over. We're coming up on the holidays, and you wish you could get together with family, but you're thinking, maybe we shouldn't. Don't lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly God is renewing us day after day. And I love this. Think of all of the hardships, the troubles, the struggles, the trials, brutal life that the Apostle Paul went through. He says, for our light and momentary troubles, in comparison with eternity, whatever we go through on this earth, it'll be nothing. It'll be the blink of an eye. It'll seem like no big deal. Our light and momentary troubles during this lockdown are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs all of the stuff that we're going through. So here's the key, verse 18. So fix your eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Now, I want you to understand, our heart breaks for so many places around the world. I was talking with our presbyter in Huhui, and he said, boy, the lockdowns were so stringent. At first, we complained about how things are here in the U.S., but he said at first, one person from every family could leave their house one time per week. That's it. Everybody else had to stay in the house nonstop. So you had to go get your groceries, you had to hit the pharmacy, you had to pay your bills, whatever it was. You had one day where you could leave the house, get everything done, and then boom, 6 days back in the house. Eventually, people were living on so little income, there was such great suffering that they had to begin to release some of the lockdowns. It has been said that our modern economies and really capitalism has lifted over 1 billion people out of the last many years out of poverty. But yet now, in just the last few months, with all the lockdowns, over 500 million people have sunk back into the despair of poverty. So countries are going, we can't keep this up. We have to let people out. So then you could go out of your house every other day. So you're still stuck in your house half the week. Could not by law leave. There are countries where the police and the military roam the streets and said, you cannot leave unless you have an absolutely urgent, critical need. In Jujuy, they finally were able to start doing in-person services again, but yet depending on whether your social security number ended on an odd or even number, that determined what day of the week you could go out. If it was an odd number, you could go out on odd days, even days. So they started having church on Friday nights and on Saturday nights, depending on, so they could catch both the odd and even. So even families were split up when they could go and be a part of church. And then Sunday, the whole nation closed down. Nothing at all on Sunday. So our struggles are so light. And yet, here's the awesome part. When we're faced with an obstacle, that doesn't mean that the mission stops. It means we just have to figure out a new way to do the mission. So I was talking with people in Argentina. I said, so you can't go visit your neighbors. You literally can't even leave your house at the beginning. You can't meet together. How in the world are you doing ministry? And they said, man, we're streaming from our apartment or our house. We're doing Facebook Live. We're using social media. We're calling people. We're sending texts and WhatsApp messages. We're using email. Now, as the lockdowns continued and people ran out of money, they couldn't pay all their bills. Some people lost their internet. Some people couldn't use their cell phones. And so the number of ways you could reach people was shrinking. But people still had their electricity on, and everybody has a radio. And the rules are different in Argentina compared to here about who can have a radio station and what you can do. So a number of churches have radio stations, and so they were broadcasting 24 hours a day, pre-recorded stuff, live stuff, just ministering over the radio. The point is, you just find a way. One of our churches that has come into the assemblies, they lost their building. Long story, I don't have time to go into. This was before the pandemic. And they scraped together all the resources they could find, and they bought a lot, and they started building a new place to meet. And they were selling empanadas. They were selling sandwiches. They were selling bread. They were selling cakes. They were doing fundraisers. They were doing everything they could. They're about 30% done on the construction, even in spite of all of the lockdowns. It's obviously slowed way down, but they're still continuing. They're still moving forward, even with tremendous difficulty. My question to you is, what does God want you to do? The Great Commission hasn't changed. The mission of God has not been put on hold. So how is it that you, instead of just sitting in your house or being frustrated over the lockdown or frustrated over social distancing or I have to wear this stupid mask or whatever your frustration might be, how do you still continue to minister to people? For instance, I went to see a friend the other day, and I hadn't seen him in months and months. I went to give him a big hug, and he, whoa. He's like, don't touch me. I was like, what? He goes, I don't want to kill my parents. I said, what are you talking about? His parents are quite a bit older, and he has to go and check in on them and take care of them. And so he goes, I'm a no-touch person. I don't handshake. I don't fist bump. I don't elbow bump. I don't anything. Nobody touches me. Nobody goes near me because I don't want to take something I can't see, smell, or taste into my parents' house and potentially kill them. So I had to honor that. I say, oh, man, okay. I totally agree. No problem. And so we sat across the table from each other outside of a Starbucks, sipping our drinks and talking and catching up. And I just felt my heart broke for him that he is so concerned, not only for his own health, but especially for the health of his parents. And he's in time of such great need. But he was willing to come out and meet with me at 6:30 a.m. at a Starbucks early in the morning before he had to go to work. And they got to find ways to continue to minister. How are your family members doing? How are your friends, your neighbors doing? How are your coworkers doing, or even your classmates? I know we get sick of doing stuff online and from a distance, but the mission of God cannot stop. If people in Jujuy, Argentina, can continue to work online, continue to work on their phone, even at the point where they're losing their service, there's constantly looking for a workaround. How can I legally work around this to continue sharing the message of God's love and forgiveness? Because everybody's going to step into an eternity. They all need to know. I say, hey, that question is the exact same for us. What does God want us to do? You know, we all know this verse, these verses out of Matthew chapter 28. I'm going to close with this. It says, Jesus came and told his disciples, I've been given all authority in heaven and earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations. When Jesus used the word nations, he wasn't referring to Iraq and Iran and Israel. He was referring to people groups, because nations are political. They change all the time. But who are the people groups around you that need to be made disciples, that need you to take the message of God's love to them? Your neighbor or your coworker or your classmate or whoever it might be. I pray that God would put in our heart, our mind, ideas of how we can reach out to them, even for those who are like, stay way back, or if you live in a part of the world where there is total lockdown and restriction, how can we continue to reach out and do the mission of God?